The most expensive thing Adrian Whitmore ever owned was the life everyone else had chosen for him. At 38, Adrian had learned how to make impossible decisions without allowing his hands to tremble. He could close $100 million acquisition before breakfast, dismiss an executive before lunch, and walk into a ballroom filled with men waiting for him to fail without breaking stride. But tonight, standing beneath the crystal chandeliers of Manhattan's Halston Grand, the white billionaire could barely breathe. 300 guests were waiting for him to announce his wedding date. Across the ballroom stood Vanessa Sterling, beautiful, wealthy, polished to perfection. Her ivory couture gown shimmered beneath the golden lights, and the diamond on her left hand was large enough to become tomorrow morning's headline. Their marriage made sense. Whitmore Capital would gain access to the Sterling family's international holdings. The Sterlings would gain the prestige of joining one of America's most powerful financial dynasties. His father called it legacy. The board called it stability. Vanessa called it destiny. Adrian had stopped calling it anything. 5 minutes, his mother whispered beside him. Then you take the stage. Adrian adjusted his black cuff link. Of course. His voice was calm. It always was. Then something happened near the ballroom entrance. A champagne tray struck the marble floor. Crystal shattered. Conversation stopped. Adrian turned. A young black woman stood frozen beside the broken glasses. Her simple navy catering uniform looked painfully ordinary among the silk gowns and tailored tuxedos surrounding her. Her name tag read Naomi Carter. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I'll clean everything. A supervisor marched toward her, his face tightening. You were warned about being careful. I know, sir. You're finished for tonight. Naomi lowered her eyes. Adrian expected pleading. Instead, she quietly removed her apron. Then she noticed an elderly server kneeling beside the shattered crystal, one hand trembling as he tried to gather the pieces. Naomi stopped. You'll cut yourself, Mr. Lewis. I've got it. No, she knelt. Her supervisor stared at her. Carter, I said leave. Naomi looked up. Then fire me tomorrow. A few guests laughed. She ignored them. He has arthritis, she said softly. He shouldn't be cleaning broken glass. Something inside Adrian went still. There was no performance in her voice. No awareness that one of Manhattan's richest men was watching her. She simply cared. Vanessa appeared beside him and followed his gaze. How embarrassing, she murmured. Adrian looked at his fiancée, then back at Naomi. The contrast struck him with uncomfortable precision. One woman wore a diamond worth nearly $2 million. The other was kneeling on cold marble protecting an old man's shaking hands. Adrian. Vanessa touched his sleeve. The announcement. Across the room, his father lifted his champagne glass, signaling that it was time. Adrian should have moved. Instead, he watched Naomi help Mr. Lewis stand. She smiled at him. Not the practiced smile of someone seeking approval. Something warmer. Something money had never managed to purchase for Adrian. Not in penthouses, private jets, boardrooms, or relationships negotiated between powerful families. Kindness without an audience. Naomi finally looked across the ballroom. For one brief second, her dark brown eyes met Adrian's. She didn't recognize him. She simply gave him the same small, courteous smile she had given the old server. Then she walked away. Adrian. Vanessa whispered impatiently. Everyone is waiting. He stared at the doorway through which Naomi had disappeared. For the first time in his carefully constructed life, Adrian Whitmore understood something terrifying. He had everything a man could buy, and suddenly, none of it felt valuable. By midnight, Adrian Whitmore had disappointed 300 guests, 2 powerful families, and a room full of reporters without saying a single word about why. The announcement will be postponed, he had told them. Nothing more. Now, morning rain traced silver lines down the windows of his penthouse office, while Manhattan disappeared beneath a blanket of gray. Adrian stood behind his desk, jacket discarded, staring at the engagement announcement his communications team had prepared. Adrian Whitmore and Vanessa Sterling to wed this fall. He folded the paper once. Then again. A knock interrupted the silence. His executive assistant, Daniel Mercer, entered carrying a tablet. Your father has called 6 times. I know. Vanessa has called 11. I know that too. Daniel hesitated. And Sterling Holdings wants confirmation that last night doesn't affect the merger. There it was. Not love. Not concern. The merger. Adrian almost laughed. Instead, he turned toward the rain. Find Naomi Carter. Daniel blinked. Who? The catering employee from last night. For the first time in years, Adrian saw genuine confusion on his assistant's face. May I ask why? No, by afternoon. A thin personnel file rested on Adrian's desk. Naomi Carter, 31, Brooklyn resident, temporary catering employee, former nursing student. Adrian paused. Former. She withdrew 3 years ago, Daniel explained. Financial reasons, apparently. She works 2 jobs now. Catering in the evenings and mornings at a community center in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Adrian looked at the photograph attached to the file. It was an ordinary employee badge picture. No diamonds. No designer makeup. Just those same steady eyes. Anything else? Daniel glanced at his notes. She takes care of her grandmother. Adrian closed the file. That's enough. But it wasn't. The following morning, instead of entering Whitmore Capital through its private underground garage, Adrian told his driver to take him to Brooklyn. The community center occupied an aging brick building between a laundromat and a small grocery store. Nothing about it belonged in Adrian's world. That was precisely why he entered. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere down the hallway. Then he saw her. Naomi stood behind a folding table arranging paper bags filled with groceries. She wore jeans, white sneakers, and a mustard-colored sweater. Her natural curls were pulled loosely behind her head. An elderly woman approached. Naomi slipped an extra carton of milk into her bag. You didn't put that on my list, the woman protested. I know. I can't pay for it. Naomi smiled. Then it's lucky I'm terrible at counting. The woman laughed. Adrian stopped walking. Again, kindness without an audience. Then Naomi looked up. Recognition flickered across her face. You were at the gala. I was. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You're Adrian Whitmore. Apparently someone had told her. Yes. Naomi glanced toward the expensive car visible through the window. Then back at him. If you came because of the broken glasses, they already deducted them from my paycheck. His jaw tightened. They did what? It's handled. No, it isn't. To me, it is. Adrian was used to people ending conversations before he decided they were finished. I wanted to thank you. For dropping champagne. For helping Mr. Lewis. Naomi became quiet. He needed help. You lost your job because of it. Then it wasn't a very good job. The simplicity of her answer unsettled him. Adrian had spent 20 years measuring every decision by what it gained. Naomi seemed to measure hers by what they protected. His phone vibrated. Vanessa. He ignored it. Naomi noticed. You should probably answer. I probably shouldn't. For the first time, amusement softened her expression. Adrian felt something shift. Not romance. Not yet. Something more dangerous. Curiosity. He had come to understand why a poor woman would risk her paycheck for an elderly server. Instead, Adrian Whitmore walked away wondering why everyone in his wealthy world had taught him that losing money was dangerous, when losing yourself costs so much more. The first thing Adrian noticed about Naomi Carter was that she never seemed impressed by anything that was supposed to impress her. Not his name. Not the black Maybach waiting outside the community center. Not the watch on his wrist that cost more than most people earned in a year. 3 days after their unexpected conversation, Adrian found himself thinking about that more often than he wanted to admit. At Whitmore Capital, the 47th floor moved according to his decisions. Executives lowered their voices when he passed. Assistants memorized his preferences. Investors crossed oceans for 20 minutes of his time. Yet Naomi had looked at him as though he were simply a man standing in her doorway. It should have irritated him. Instead, it felt strangely honest. Your father is waiting. Daniel's voice pulled Adrian back to the boardroom. Richard Whitmore sat at the far end of the polished walnut table, silver-haired and perfectly composed. Beside him sat Charles Sterling, Vanessa's father. Adrian immediately understood. This wasn't a meeting. It was an intervention. The postponement has created unnecessary speculation, Richard said. Charles folded his hands. The markets dislike uncertainty. Adrian took his seat. My marriage isn't a market. Silence. His father's expression hardened. When 2 families control this much capital, marriage is never merely personal. There it was again. Capital. Legacy. Strategy. Everything except love. Charles slid a folder across the table. Inside were projections showing what the Whitmore-Sterling alliance could create. Numbers climbed into billions. Adrian stared at them without feeling anything. Vanessa has stood beside you for 4 years, Charles said. She understands your world. Perhaps that was the problem. She understood it too well. Across Brooklyn, Naomi Carter was carrying 2 grocery bags up 3 flights of narrow stairs. Her grandmother, Evelyn, sat beside the apartment window wrapped in a faded blue cardigan. "You're late." Naomi smiled. Mr. Alvarez needed help filling out his housing paperwork. "You keep saving everybody." "I brought peach pie." Evelyn's suspicion vanished. "That changes everything." Naomi laughed, and the tiny apartment seemed warmer. There were no chandeliers here, no marble floors, no paintings guarded by security systems. But there were photographs. Naomi at nursing school. Naomi's mother laughing on a summer afternoon. A younger Evelyn holding Naomi as a child. Evidence of a life measured not by possessions, but by people. Later that evening, Naomi found an envelope beneath the apartment door. Whitmore Foundation. Her smile disappeared. Inside was a letter offering full financial support for her return to nursing school. Tuition, books, living expenses, everything. Naomi read it twice. Then she reached for her phone. Adrian answered on the 3rd ring. "Naomi, you investigated me." His silence confirmed it. "I wanted to help. You wanted to fix something. There's a difference?" "Yes." Her voice remained calm. That made the word sharper. Helping is asking someone what they need. Fixing is deciding their life is broken because it doesn't look like yours. Adrian stood slowly behind his desk. No one spoke to him like this. "I thought you wanted to finish nursing school." "I do." "Then accept it." "No," one word. "Steady." "Absolute." Adrian looked through the windows at Manhattan glowing beneath him. "Why?" "Because I don't want to owe you." "You wouldn't." "Men like you always believe money comes without strings because you've never been the person standing underneath them." The sentence landed harder than anger would have. Adrian said nothing. Naomi softened slightly. "If you really want to help, Mr. Whitmore, come to the community center Saturday morning." "For what?" "We're repainting the children's reading room." Adrian glanced down at his tailored suit. "You want me to paint a wall?" "I want to see whether you know how to give something that doesn't have your name written on it." The call ended. Adrian remained motionless. On his desk sat a merger worth billions. Beside it lay Vanessa's engagement announcement. And somewhere in Brooklyn, a woman who possessed almost nothing had just refused everything he knew how to offer. For the first time, Adrian began to understand why Naomi Carter frightened him. She could not be purchased, and neither could the thing inside her that he was slowly realizing had been missing from his world all along. "You're late, billionaire." Naomi Carter stood in the doorway of the community center with a paint roller in one hand and a streak of pale blue across her cheek. Adrian Whitmore glanced at his watch. By 3 minutes. Children are less forgiving than shareholders. Behind her, Saturday sunlight spilled across a reading room filled with battered shelves, mismatched chairs, and 6 volunteers covering the walls with fresh paint. Adrian looked painfully out of place. His white shirt probably cost more than the room's entire furniture budget. His polished shoes had never encountered a paint tray, and for once, there was no assistant beside him to make inconvenience disappear. Naomi handed him a roller. "No jacket. I left it in the car." "Good. Maybe there's hope for you." He almost smiled. 2 hours later, Adrian had paint on his sleeve. His expensive shoes were ruined, and an 8-year-old named Marcus had informed him that his painting technique was kind of terrible. Naomi laughed. Adrian turned toward her. It was the first time he had heard her laugh without restraint. Something about the sound caught him unexpectedly. In his world, laughter was often strategic. People laughed because a chairman made a joke, because an investor needed reassurance, because cameras were watching. Naomi laughed because something was funny. Nothing more. Nothing less. "You're enjoying this," he said. "More than I should." Marcus appeared carrying a small wooden bookshelf. "Mr. Adrian, can you help?" Adrian immediately reached for it. Together they moved the shelf beneath the window. When they finished, Marcus looked up. "My mom says rich people pay other people to do everything." Naomi froze. Adrian glanced at her. "She's mostly right." Marcus considered this. "Then why are you here?" The room seemed strangely quiet. Adrian could have given the easy answer. Charity. Community responsibility. Corporate citizenship. Instead, his eyes found Naomi. "I'm trying to learn something." "What?" Adrian looked at the blue paint covering his hands. "How to be useful." Naomi's expression changed. Only slightly. But he saw it. Later, they sat on the building's back steps eating sandwiches from brown paper bags. Adrian's phone vibrated repeatedly inside his pocket. Vanessa, his father, the board. He ignored all three. Naomi noticed. Your empire is calling. It can survive lunch. Careful. You're becoming reckless. The humor faded when Adrian looked at her. Why nursing? Naomi stared toward the basketball court across the alley. My mother. He waited. She got sick when I was 19. Hospitals frightened her. But there was one nurse who always sat beside her before treatments. She remembered how my mother liked her tea. She remembered my name. Naomi's voice softened. She couldn't change what was happening, but she made my mother feel like a person instead of a diagnosis. Adrian said nothing. My mother died 2 years later. I'm sorry. Naomi nodded. I wanted to become that kind of person for somebody else. And then you left school. Grandma needed me. Bills needed paying. You gave up your future. Naomi turned toward him. No. I postponed one dream to protect someone I love. The distinction struck him. Adrian had spent his life surrounded by people who sacrificed relationships for ambition and called it strength. Naomi had sacrificed ambition for love and refused to call it sacrifice. His phone vibrated again. This time, Vanessa's message appeared across the screen. We need to discuss the wedding. Today. Adrian stared at it, then turned the phone face down. Naomi rose and offered him her paint-stained hand. Come on, billionaire. We still have one wall left. He took her hand, and somewhere between the blue paint, the children's laughter, and a woman who had chosen love over convenience, Adrian felt the first crack appear in the life built for him. For once, he didn't want to repair it. You don't fall in love with someone because they fit your life. Sometimes you fall because they make you question the life you built. Adrian understood that truth on a Tuesday evening. He had invited Naomi to dinner. She refused. So he asked again, without mentioning restaurants, chauffeurs, or reservations. This time, she agreed. They met at a small family-owned cafe in Brooklyn where the tables were slightly uneven and handwritten photographs covered the walls. Adrian arrived without his driver and wore a simple charcoal sweater instead of a suit. Naomi noticed immediately. No armor tonight. Adrian pulled out her chair. I was told I needed to learn how normal people live. I never said normal. You implied it. She smiled. Progress. Over dinner, Adrian discovered pieces of Naomi no personnel file could have revealed. She hated expensive coffee, but loved old bookstores. She could remember every child's birthday at the community center, but regularly forgot her own appointments. She dreamed of finishing nursing school, then opening a neighborhood clinic where people would never feel ashamed because they could not afford care. And you? She asked. Adrian paused. What about me? What do you want? The question sounded simple. It wasn't. I want Whitmore Capital to remain successful. Naomi shook her head. That's what you're responsible for. I asked what you want. Adrian looked down at his untouched coffee. No one had asked him that in years. Perhaps no one ever had. I don't know. Naomi didn't laugh. She simply nodded. That sounds lonely. The words reached somewhere money had never protected. Outside, rain had begun falling. They walked beneath one umbrella toward Naomi's apartment, shoulders occasionally brushing. For several blocks, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. That frightened Adrian more than attraction would have. Across Manhattan, Vanessa Sterling was sitting inside Richard Whitmore's private study. On the desk between them lay several photographs. Adrian entering the community center. Adrian beside Naomi. Adrian laughing on the sidewalk. Vanessa lifted one photograph carefully. Who is she? Richard's expression remained cold. A distraction. Vanessa stared at Naomi's face. Her embarrassment quickly hardened into something sharper. He postponed our announcement because of her. I intend to find out. The following morning, Naomi arrived at the community center and found a black limousine waiting outside. Vanessa stepped from it. Ivory coat, pearl earrings, perfect posture. Naomi immediately recognized her from magazines. Naomi Carter? Yes. Vanessa looked around the aging neighborhood before returning her attention to Naomi. I think we should talk. There's nothing to discuss. Vanessa smiled. There is when you're interfering with my marriage. You aren't married. The smile vanished. Naomi remained calm. I haven't asked Adrian for anything. That's precisely why he finds you fascinating. Vanessa opened her handbag and removed an envelope. She held it out. Naomi didn't take it. What is that? Enough money to finish nursing school. Enough to move your grandmother somewhere better. Enough to stop pretending dignity pays bills. Naomi stared at the envelope, then at Vanessa. For one quiet moment, neither woman moved. Finally, Naomi spoke. You think being poor means everything has a price. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Everyone has a price. Naomi gently pushed the envelope back toward her. No. Some people just spend their entire lives surrounded by things expensive enough to make them forget that. Vanessa's face hardened. A car door closed behind them. Both women turned. Adrian stood on the sidewalk. He had heard enough. His gaze moved from the envelope in Vanessa's hand to Naomi's steady face. And something inside him became perfectly clear. For months, everyone had asked whether Vanessa Sterling was wealthy enough, connected enough, polished enough to become Adrian Whitmore's wife. Standing there beneath the cold morning light, Adrian finally understood they had been asking the wrong question. The question was never what Vanessa possessed. It was what Naomi possessed that no fortune could purchase. And for the first time, Adrian was ready to risk everything to find out. If you ever have to buy someone's absence, Vanessa, perhaps you should ask yourself why you're afraid of their presence. Adrian's voice cut through the morning air. Vanessa slowly turned. For the first time since Naomi had met her, the wealthy heiress looked genuinely unsettled. Adrian. He walked toward them, his expression controlled. His eyes settled on the envelope. How much? Vanessa straightened. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you offered Naomi money to disappear. I was protecting our future. Our future. Adrian repeated the words quietly. Naomi could feel the tension gathering between them, but she refused to become the reason two powerful people performed their private war on a Brooklyn sidewalk. She stepped back. I'm going inside. Naomi. She looked at Adrian. No, one word stopped him. This belongs between you and Vanessa. Then she entered the community center. Adrian watched the door close. Vanessa exhaled sharply. You're humiliating me over a woman you barely know. No. I'm finally paying attention to a woman I've known for 4 years. The sentence struck harder than anger. Vanessa's face changed. Our families planned this marriage. I know. You proposed to me. I did. And now you're throwing everything away because some poor woman impressed you by painting walls and helping old people. Adrian's jaw tightened. That sentence is exactly why we have a problem. Vanessa stared at him. He had spent years admiring her intelligence, elegance, and discipline. She knew how to enter any room and become its center. She understood negotiations, reputations, alliances. But somewhere along the way, Adrian had mistaken compatibility for connection. Their relationship had become another merger. Beautiful on paper, empty in silence. I never promised to become poor to prove I have a heart, Vanessa said. I never asked you to. Then what do you want from me? Adrian looked through the community center window. Inside, Naomi was already helping a child zip his winter coat. She hadn't looked back. I wanted to know whether there was anything between us that existed without money, expectation, or family pressure. Vanessa's eyes glistened, but her voice remained proud. And Adrian finally faced her. I don't know anymore. That evening, Richard Whitmore summoned his son to the family estate. The mansion glowed beneath warm exterior lights, magnificent and cold against the dark Connecticut sky. Richard waited in the library. You will end this nonsense. Adrian poured himself water. No, you're risking the Sterling partnership. Yes. Over Naomi Carter? Adrian's gaze sharpened. Leave her out of this. Richard gave a humorless laugh. You think this is love? I never said it was. Then what is it? Adrian became silent. He remembered Naomi refusing his scholarship, her paint-stained hand, her mother's story, the way she protected people when nobody important was watching. She reminds me that I don't like the man I've become. Richard's expression hardened. I built everything you have, and I'm grateful. Then act like it. Adrian placed his glass down. You built an empire, Dad. You also taught me that every relationship was an investment. That philosophy made you powerful. It made me lonely. Silence filled the library. For once, Richard Whitmore had no immediate answer. Adrian removed something from his coat pocket. The engagement ring Vanessa had returned that afternoon. He placed it on his father's desk. The diamond caught the lamplight brilliantly. Perfect. Flawless. Worth a fortune. I'm not marrying Vanessa. Richard stared at the ring. If you walk away from this alliance, the board may turn against you. Then let them. You could lose billions. Adrian looked at the diamond one final time. Then he thought of Naomi Carter, who had almost nothing and still refused to sell the most valuable parts of herself. Maybe, Adrian said quietly. I need to lose what money can buy before I understand what it never could. Sometimes freedom does not arrive as an open door. Sometimes it arrives as the sound of everything you were taught to value collapsing behind you. By Monday morning, Manhattan knew Adrian Whitmore had canceled his engagement. Financial networks called it a strategic crisis. Society columns called it a scandal. The Whitmore Capital Board called an emergency meeting. Naomi Carter called him nothing at all. She had not answered his messages since Vanessa appeared outside the community center. Adrian understood why, so he stopped sending them. At 9:15, he entered the Whitmore Capital boardroom. 12 directors waited beneath cold recessed lights. Richard Whitmore sat at the opposite end. An empty chair beside him belonged to Charles Sterling. Its emptiness was deliberate. Sterling Holdings has suspended negotiations, one director announced. I'm aware. Our European expansion depended on that agreement. Then we build another path. A gray-haired director leaned forward. Because of a woman? Adrian's expression changed. No, the room quieted. I ended my engagement because I refused to turn marriage into a corporate obligation. You understood the arrangement when you proposed. I understood the numbers. Adrian placed both hands on the table. I didn't understand the cost. His father watched silently. For 30 minutes, they attacked his judgment. Shareholder confidence, public perception, succession, billions in projected value. Adrian listened. Then he stood. If your confidence in me depends on whom I marry, replace me. Silence. No one had expected that. Neither had Richard. Adrian buttoned his jacket. But if I remain CEO, my personal life will never again appear on a balance sheet. He walked out before anyone could answer. Across Brooklyn, Naomi sat beside her grandmother's kitchen table while rain tapped gently against the window. Evelyn folded the newspaper. So, Naomi continued peeling an orange. So what? A billionaire canceled his wedding. That happens. Apparently because he discovered principles. Naomi gave her grandmother a look. Evelyn smiled. You like him? He's complicated. That wasn't my question. Naomi placed the orange peel down. He belongs to a world where people solve problems with checks. And I refuse to become another problem he thinks he can solve. Evelyn reached across the table. Then don't. Naomi looked up. But don't punish a man forever for the language he was taught if he's trying to learn another one. The words stayed with her. That afternoon, Adrian returned to the community center. No security. No flowers. No scholarship envelope. He carried 2 cardboard boxes. Naomi found him kneeling beside the reading room shelves. What are those? Books. She crossed her arms. How much did they cost? Nothing. Her eyebrow lifted. The Whitmore offices were clearing an old employee library. I asked before they threw these away. Naomi examined the boxes. Children's classics. Dictionaries. Biographies. Worn covers. Useful things. No plaque. No foundation logo. No Adrian Whitmore written anywhere. You listened, she said. I'm trying. He stood. For several seconds, they simply faced each other. I didn't end my engagement for you, Adrian said. Naomi's expression softened with surprise. I ended it because meeting you forced me to see what I had been accepting. That matters. I hoped it would. But Adrian, he waited. I won't be your reward for becoming a better man. A faint smile touched his face. I know. And I don't need rescuing. I know that too. Outside, children raced past the window beneath bright umbrellas. Adrian looked at Naomi. So what happens now? She picked up one of the boxes. Now. She handed him the heavier one. You help me carry these upstairs. Adrian laughed quietly. And for the first time, Naomi laughed with him. There was no engagement ring between them. No contract. No promise. Only 2 people carrying old books up a narrow staircase. But Adrian understood something as he followed her. For the first time in his life, he was not purchasing a future. He was earning the right to be present in one. The people who truly change your life rarely ask you to become someone else. They simply make it impossible to keep pretending you are someone you no longer want to be. 3 weeks passed. Adrian did not send Naomi diamonds. He did not reserve restaurants. He did not arrive with solutions disguised as generosity. He simply kept showing up. On Tuesdays, he helped organize donated books at the community center. On Saturdays, he carried grocery boxes upstairs. Once, wearing a navy sweater and very expensive shoes, he spent 40 minutes repairing a broken cabinet while 12-year-old Marcus repeatedly explained that he was holding the screwdriver incorrectly. Naomi watched from the doorway. You run a multinational corporation. Yes, but a cabinet defeated you. It was poorly designed. It's from IKEA. Exactly. Her laughter filled the room. Adrian smiled. These moments had become dangerously important to him. But outside those walls, his old world was becoming less forgiving. Whitmore Capital shares had stabilized, yet newspapers continued dissecting the canceled engagement. Vanessa appeared at charity events alone, graceful and silent, while anonymous sources described Adrian as impulsive. Then came the photograph. Adrian and Naomi leaving the community center together. By morning, her face was everywhere. Who was the woman who came between two dynasties? Naomi stared at the headline on her phone. Her stomach tightened. She had not come between anyone. But truth rarely traveled as quickly as scandal. At work, strangers whispered. Outside the community center, photographers waited. By evening, Naomi had made her decision. Adrian found her packing supplies into a storage cabinet. You're leaving? For a while. Because of the press? Because children shouldn't walk through cameras to get inside. His jaw tightened. I can stop this. Naomi turned. There it was again. The instinct to control. To fix. Adrian recognized it before she needed to say anything. He exhaled. What do you need from me? The question changed everything. Naomi's shoulders relaxed. Nothing. He nodded. It hurt. But he nodded. I'll respect that. She studied him carefully. You really have changed. Not enough. No, she said softly. But enough to notice. The next evening, Adrian attended the Whitmore Foundation's annual gala alone. The ballroom glittered with familiar wealth. Crystal, champagne, diamonds. The same world that once seemed permanent. Reporters gathered near the entrance. One called out, Mr. Whitmore, did Naomi Carter cause the end of your engagement? Adrian stopped. Cameras lifted. Richard watched from across the room. Vanessa stood nearby in silver silk, perfectly composed. Adrian could have ignored the question. Instead, he turned toward the cameras. No, the room quieted. Naomi Carter did not destroy my engagement. She did not pursue me, ask me for money, or interfere in my relationship. Another reporter leaned forward. Then why did you cancel the wedding? Adrian looked directly into the cameras. Because I realized I was about to marry for every reason except love. Silence. And Miss Carter? His voice softened. She showed me something I had forgotten existed. What? Adrian glanced around the magnificent ballroom. Everything shimmered. Everything had a price. Character. Across Brooklyn, Naomi watched the interview from her grandmother's small television. Evelyn said nothing. Naomi's eyes remained fixed on Adrian. He had not rescued her. He had not claimed her. He had simply told the truth and accepted the consequences. For the first time, Naomi saw not the billionaire who had entered her community center believing money could repair everything. She saw a man learning humility. And beneath the television's pale light, something she had carefully guarded began to move inside her. Not gratitude. Not obligation. Trust. Small. Fragile. But real. And for Adrian Whitmore, it would prove more valuable than every fortune bearing his name. Trust does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it returns quietly, one honest choice at a time. 2 days after Adrian's statement at the gala, Naomi Carter returned to the community center. The photographers were gone. The headlines had moved on. But something inside her had not. She found Adrian in the reading room, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Marcus, attempting to assemble a donated desk. You put that piece backward, Naomi said from the doorway. Adrian looked up. Good morning to you too. Marcus sighed dramatically. I told him. Naomi smiled. For the first time since meeting Adrian Whitmore, she did not see the billionaire first. She saw the man. That realization frightened her. Later, they walked to a small coffee shop around the corner. No security followed them. No cameras waited outside. Adrian ordered ordinary coffee. Naomi noticed. You're learning. I still think it tastes terrible. That means you're learning honestly. They sat near the window. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Naomi placed her hands around her cup. I saw the interview. Adrian's expression became careful. I'm sorry your name was dragged into this. You didn't drag it. My world did. And you corrected it. I told the truth. Naomi looked at him. That's rarer than you think. Adrian almost smiled, but something in her expression stopped him. You could have made yourself look better, she continued. You could have blamed Vanessa, or your father, or me. I made the decision. Yes, and I'll carry it. There was no performance in his voice. Naomi recognized that now. Adrian was changing, but not because change guaranteed him a reward. That mattered. My mother used to say character is what remains when nobody is applauding, Naomi said. Adrian glanced toward the rainy street. I spent most of my life surrounded by applause. Did it make you happy? No, the answer came immediately. Naomi's eyes softened. Adrian leaned back. My father taught me that security came from controlling every variable. Money, reputation, relationships. And now I think control is sometimes just fear wearing an expensive suit. Naomi laughed quietly. That sounds suspiciously self-aware. I've had an irritating teacher. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, billionaire. He smiled. Then his expression grew serious. I don't want to pressure you. You aren't. I need you to know something anyway. Naomi waited. I think about you when I'm not with you. The cafe seemed suddenly quieter. Adrian continued. Not because you're different from the women in my world. Not because you refuse my money. And not because you taught me some convenient lesson about life. His voice lowered. I think about you because when I'm with you, I recognize myself more clearly. Naomi looked down at her coffee. There had been men who admired her strength. Men who admired her beauty. Men who admired how little she asked from them. But Adrian was not asking her to remain strong for his comfort. He was becoming stronger beside her. That doesn't mean I'm ready, she whispered. I know. And I won't enter your world as someone you rescued. You never needed rescuing. Their eyes met. Adrian reached across the table, then stopped before touching her hand. He waited. The gesture was so small that nobody else would have understood its importance. Naomi did. Slowly, she closed the distance herself. Her fingers rested over his. No cameras. No diamonds. No promises. Just permission. Outside, Manhattan's distant towers disappeared behind gray clouds, while Brooklyn moved through another ordinary morning. Adrian looked at their joined hands. For years, he had believed wealth meant having the power to acquire whatever he desired. Naomi Carter was teaching him something far more difficult. The most valuable things in life could never be acquired. They could only be given. And trust, once freely given, was worth protecting more carefully than any empire.